Namaskar and thank you for tuning in to the Economic Brief, your weekly program on all that's making news in the world of business and economy from an Indian point of view of the world. On the program, India's defense budget increases about 260% in 10 years, strengthening self-reliance. Defense manufacturing gives India a global defense footprint. Operation Sindhur displays India's advanced electronic warfare, sensors, satellites, and indigenously developed technology. India-UK FTA to act as a template for future trade deals as India negotiates trade deals with EU and US. And US President Donald Trump's visit to the Gulf countries means business more than usual. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh spoke from Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir, clarifying India's defence doctrine that has resulted, from the Operation Sindhur. Let's listen to what he said.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर सिर्फ एक ऑपरेशन का नाम भर नहीं है, बल्कि यह एक हमारी प्रतिबद्धता है, यह हमारा एक कमिटमेंट है, एक ऐसी प्रतिबद्धता जिसमें भारत ने दिखा दिया कि हम सिर्फ डिफेंस नहीं करते हैं, जब वक्त आता है तो हम कठोर निर्णय भी लेते हैं और कठोर कार्रवाई भी करते हैं.
So there's been a significant boost to India's defense budget over the last 11 years from 2013-14 till date. In fact, the figures are showing up on your screen. In 2013-14, the budget was around $29.76 billion. And currently, it is around $80.11 billion. Rupee figures are also there, 2.53 lakh crore rupees and 6.81 lakh crore rupees currently. What does this show? It shows commitment to national security and also a significant jump of about 43% in the capital expenditure, especially in this year's budget, this year's union budget. $21 billion has been allocated for capital expenditure. That's the modernization of the armed forces. Now, about that also, we have about $3 billion which has been allocated in this year's budget for defense R&D. Now, what the government looking at is looking at artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, long endurance drones, next generation submarines, ships, platforms, basically strengthening military infrastructure for self-reliance. Let's look at India's exports, because this is a sign of self-reliance. India's exports. Currently, India's exports are about $2.77 billion. They have come from 686 crore rupees, which is about $80 million, to about $2.77 billion currently. That's a 34-fold increase. Huge amount of exports. India exports, ammunition, weapons, subsystems, components, and it exports it to nearly 80 different countries. India also has a target now of about 50,000 crore rupees of exports by 2029. That's about $5.8 billion, almost double of what it is currently. That's the target for the next 4 years. And also, the BrahMos, Akash missile systems are parts of what India is already exporting. Radars, electronic warfare systems, even aircraft India is exporting. All this has happened because there's been strategic reforms in the defense sector. The private sector is participating in a great way. India has been able to bolster its defense footprint globally. And globally now, India has become a trusted defense exporter. A trusted defense exporter. Now, Operation Sindhur was launched on May 7 in response to a Pakistan-sponsored terror attack in Pahalgam. It has demonstrated India's advancements in both kinetic and non-kinetic warfare. Anu Kaushik reports.
Launched on May 7th in retaliation to Pakistan-sponsored terror attack in Pahalgam, Operation Sindhur's success has demonstrated the capabilities of India's indigenous weapons and tech. Developed by the Bharat Electronics Limited, Akash surface-to-air missile defense system intercepted Pakistani missiles and repelled attacks by drone swarms. With a real-time multi-sensor data processing and threat assessment, Akash can intercept multiple threats simultaneously. The D4 anti-drone system is instrumental in detecting, tracking, and neutralizing drones. A 3D surveillance radar, Rohini monitors the airspace for Indian Air Force, while Swati is designed to accurately detect the location of enemy weapons. The Samyukta electronic warfare system disrupts radars, communication networks, and missiles from receiving accurate information about their targets. Nagastra-1, the country's first indigenous suicide drone, uses GPS for precision strikes. During Operation Sindoor, Nagastra prevented drone attacks. Developed by an India-Russia joint venture, the BrahMos missile was used by the IAF to carry out precision strikes on Pakistani air bases. Jointly developed by the Israel Aerospace Industries and India's Defense Research and Development Organization, the Barak-8 is a surface-to-air missile designed to defend against any type of aerial threats like aircraft, helicopters, drones, and ballistic missiles. 10 ISRO satellites have been working round the clock for strategic purposes. India continues to make strides in this direction. The country successfully tested a new indigenous low-cost counter-drone system called Bhargavastra, which has advanced capabilities for detecting and eliminating small incoming drones. The Economic Brief, DD India.
And Dr. G. Satish Reddy, who served as the scientific advisor to the Defence Minister and also as a former chairman of DRDO. We're privileged to have him with us. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Now, India's defence ecosystem, how much has, public-private participation helped in building India's self-reliance capabilities, especially in the R&D and innovation space?
A lot has changed in the last 10 years. Right in the budget, you are seeing the allocations in the budget have gone up tremendously from 2,53,000 crores to 6,81,000 crores. The R&D budget has gone up a lot. It has become now 26,000 crores. And there are many measures which have been brought in to bring in industry into the defense production and also into the design and development in a big way. A lot of measures. IDDM, that is indigenously designed, developed and manufactured category, has been given the highest priority. This is number one. Then Make 1, Make 2, Make 3 have been brought in to promote development in the industry. The DRDO has brought in very specific mechanism called DCPP, Development Cum Production Partner, to integrate with the industry in a big way, right from the R&D stage itself till the production, so that the technology transfer takes place automatically and the knowledge transfer takes place, and the next version of the equipment can be manufactured by the industry, developed by the industry on its own. This is another important measure.
Indeed.
There have been other measures to promote R&D and innovation in the industry. Is the technology development funding of DRDO,
right,
which actually funds up to 50 crore rupees to each startup or MSME, has been a big boost to the industry.
Indeed.
IDEX, a scheme which to promote innovations in the startup, has almost about 450 cases. Our industries have been funded from IDEX, and more than about 500 crores have been funded. And now the value of the production orders for these IDEX cases is about close to about 1,200 crores.
Okay, and we've seen that you've been telling us all about these strategic reforms. But Dr. Reddy, we've seen a 34-fold increase in exports. India was at one time, the largest defense importer in the world. How quickly can India develop into a major defense exporter?
Yeah, let me first say that the major step was bringing in private industry into the defense production in a big way. Private industry started manufacturing missiles, bombs, radars, tanks, guns, many things. So that paved the way for exports in a big way. The, this year, the exports have crossed 23,600 crores. And the indigenous content in the armed forces, which was about 30-35%, has become now about 65% now. And so the confidence in the Indian systems, the confidence in the advanced systems of Indian systems has gone up globally. So we are exporting now missiles, we are exporting guns, we are exporting electronic warfare systems, we are exporting many other systems which are like radars and everything to various countries now, and the interest is going year by year.
Indeed.
And I'm sure the target what Honorable Raksha Mantri has kept for the exports, which is 50,000 crores,
yes,
will be achieved soon. I feel by about 2027-28 itself, we should be able to achieve.
Indeed. So the momentum is there. But Dr. Reddy, given the threat perception, especially we've seen Operation Sindhur now, threat perception from India's neighborhood, how would you view this nearly 300% increase in defense budget over the last 11 years? And, what kind of, it should be, other countries are looking at 2% of GDP and all that. Ours is about that much right now.
A lot has increased. As you see now, it is 6,80,000 crores and capital budget about 1,80,000 crores. 75% of it is for the indigenous manufacturing. So indigenous means most advanced systems. If you develop indigenously, you have the complete know-how, know-why, and you have the complete hold on the system, and the knowledge is available only to you. Your adversaries do not have any knowledge about the system what you have, and it becomes a surprise to them when you actually display in the operations. That is what has happened here.
Right.
The air defense systems, the electronic warfare systems, and many other technologies, the anti-drone technologies, what have been developed have become a surprise to the adversary, wherein as per the reports what we have seen, that we could handle every incoming vehicle. And that's the great achievement by the Indian scientists, the industries, and the armed forces. Particularly the armed forces get trained a lot in the indigenous system because they are involved right from the development. They are part of the development trials, they are part of the user trials, and then regular training exercises happen. Though they have hands-on experience in using the equipment, that makes them very easy to operate in the actual scenario. That is what has happened.
Indeed. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Satish Reddy. Thank you for joining us here on the Economic Brief and expanding what India's, how defense expenditure has increased and in which avenues that money has gone. Thank you very much.
I'm sure that India will be become a leader in exports and becomes a very advanced nation in defense technologies very soon.
Leave it there. Thank you, sir. Now, moving on to our next story, the India-UK Free Trade Agreement. It will significantly reduce tariffs and boost trade and investment opportunities across key sectors like textiles, pharmaceuticals, automobiles and technology. This report provides context.
India and the United Kingdom recently finalized a free trade agreement, an FTA, that is expected to bring significant economic benefits to both nations. India will reduce tariffs on 90% of UK imports, with 85% of them becoming tariff-free over the next decade. The deal also includes tariff reductions on UK spirits, initially halved to 75% and later reduced to 40% over 10 years. Additionally, automobile imports from the UK, previously subject to a 100% tariff, are set to decline to just 10%.
Mr. Speaker, he makes a very good point. We are backing British car companies like JLR, and our India trade deal will see tariffs slashed for car sales, and that is good for British jobs. And the criticism on the double taxation is incoherent nonsense.
India's exporters would benefit greatly, as over 99% of its tariff lines enjoy zero duty access in the UK. The agreement addresses concerns regarding double social security payments for Indian workers and is projected to boost bilateral trade by £25.5 billion annually from 2040.
Mobility is something which was very, very important for us to be able to send our skilled force from here, be able to kind of work together in some of these areas. So most certainly a big boost from both the services as well as the goods standpoint.
Tariff reductions are scheduled to begin immediately, making Indian textiles, pharmaceuticals, and IT services more competitive in the global market. The deal is anticipated to attract new investments and generate employment across manufacturing, technology, and services sectors. Small businesses would also gain increased access to UK and global markets, while British companies would tap into India's massive consumer base.
And in case we want to be in a big league, naturally we have to think and work in a direction where you are more liberalized, you are more open to the world, you can export more, you can import more.
Both nations plan to collaborate on advanced technologies in artificial intelligence, space research, and biotechnology. Additionally, scholarships and research partnerships between Indian and UK universities are set to expand. The agreement strengthens India's role as a key global supplier and paves the way for future trade deals. The Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, Professor Abhijit Das, international trade expert who was long associated with the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade and was the head of the WTO Center there, joins us now. Professor Das, how does this deal, compare with other FTAs India has negotiated? Why is it being seen as a template, for future deals?
Firstly, thank you, Mark, for having me on your program. It's always a privilege to be here. We need to contextualize this agreement in a situation when President Trump and United States has launched a frontal assault on rules-based system. Here we have two very large economies, India and UK, coming together, demonstrating the power of cooperation, collaboration to finalize a trade agreement that is rules-based. So it does send a very, very powerful signal world over. So that is the first point which we have to recognize. The second point which we need to recognize is that although at this juncture, we do not have the legal text in public domain, but based on what we've been reading in the media or hearing in the media, it appears that Indian exports, particularly in labor-intensive sectors such as clothing, textiles, gems and jewelry, they will get significant duty reductions. Let's remind ourselves that particularly in the wearing apparel sector, although the duty in UK may appear to be relatively low at 11% or so, this is almost 3 times the average duty.
Okay.
So lowering of this duty will give us considerable benefit for our apparel exporters, and there could be many other sectors where we will stand to gain. So no doubt, this is a landmark agreement.
Yes.
And why it is being talked of as a very big achievement is that it is an agreement with one of the largest economies in times of trade turmoil.
Okay, indeed. But Professor Das, how does it boost India's SME manufacturing capacities?
There we will have to again await the fine print. But let's remind ourselves that when it comes to the clothing sector, much of what India exports gets sourced from MSME sectors. So the large exporters really source their supplies from MSME. So if the large exporters are able to expand their exports to the UK, that in turn will boost the sales of MSMEs. And that is just one illustration. There could be other sectors, particularly, let's say, in the leather sector or gems and jewelry sector, where the same dynamics will play out. So it will be a very important win, not only for the Indian exporters, but for the upstream MSMEs who supply to our exporters.
Indeed. Professor Das, also, how does it benefit Indian multinationals with a strong UK presence, Tata's, Mahindra, Infosys, Wipro, etc.?
Here we have to look at two dimensions. One is from the manufacturing perspective, where movement of parts and components around supply chains, that will get facilitated, no doubt about it. When it comes to services sector, again, what we've been hearing and reading, as I had mentioned earlier, we don't have the final text, but what we've been hearing and reading is that the agreement contains important provisions which will facilitate intra-corporate movement of professionals, movement of independent personnel, professionals. So, in sum, the agreement really will help Indian entities which have a presence in UK as well through supply chains and through movement of professionals.
Indeed, Professor Das, India has already had signed agreements with Australia, UAE, with the European Free Trade Association. And this, reports say, is much better. I mean, in, let's say, for instance, in Australia, the elimination was for 96% of the tariffs, but here it's 99% of the tariffs, apparently. And also, you know, the visa pathways were largely only for certain types of individuals. Here, there's a lot more mobility of labor. So how do you see this as a template once again?
What we need to remember is that the UK economy is far larger in size compared to Australia or compared to what we've done with our past FTAs. And number two, in UK, we have close cultural ties. We have a big diaspora. That is going to create a considerable demand for Indian exports. We also have a huge presence of Indian business entities in UK that will facilitate manufacturing exports as well as services exports. So given these taking these factors into consideration, what we see in this agreement can become a template. In fact, the concessions that we may have given in this agreement really thereafter now becomes the floor for our negotiations with both European Union and US. So those negotiations perhaps will treat the concessions that we've granted as the starting point.
So which do you think would be negotiated faster? The EU also, you know, as was our negotiations there have been going on for a long, long time. And well, the US also seems to be keen on working out a deal fast. You know, there is a feeling that by this year itself, we'll have both these deals organized. In that context, you see this, you know, the momentum being built up by this particular agreement?
Absolutely no doubt, Mark. This agreement will build the momentum for a successful conclusion of the bilateral trade agreement with US as well as the more comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union. And what we will really need to remember is that the agreement with UK will not come into force immediately. There will be a time for domestic ratification on both sides. Prior to that, there'll be legal scrubbing. And it will come into force maybe 9 months or a year down the line.
Okay. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Abhijit Das, international trade expert. Thank you for putting that into context for us. Our next story is what kind of economic gains can the US expect from President Trump's visits to Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates? Now, the visits looked at boosting investments and also boosting military ties. Now, clearly strengthening economic partnerships with these key Gulf countries was President Trump's priority. Diptanshu Kashyap brings us more in this report. And we leave you with his report. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.
For the first state visit of his second term, US President Donald Trump arrived in Saudi Arabia with a sharp focus on boosting trade and securing major economic deals. Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman quickly finalized a $600 billion investment agreement spanning energy, infrastructure and defense. The deal promises significant job creation and economic growth in the US.
This trip We're adding over $1 trillion more in terms of investment into our country and buying our products. And, you know, nobody makes military equipment like us. We have the best military equipment, the best missiles, the best rockets, the best everything. Best submarines, by the way.
In Qatar's Doha, Trump was welcomed on a red carpet by Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, with whom he announced several major deals, including a record $96 billion order for 160 Boeing aircraft, Boeing's largest wide-body order ever. The White House estimates these agreements could generate $1.2 trillion in investment. During a meeting with business leaders, Trump also said that his Gulf tour could raise up to $4 trillion in deals. Controversy erupted over Qatar's offer of a $400 million luxury jet to the US, which critics say Trump could use personally after his presidency. Qatar insists this is a government-to-government transaction and it remains under legal review. Meanwhile, Trump surprised many by announcing plans to lift 46-year-long standing US sanctions on Syria, a move drawing both support and caution amid Syria's fragile new government.
It's not going to be a dynasty the way that it was under the Assads. And anytime that happens, there's so much sort of at stake and so much up in the air that things can change in really unpredictable ways.
Trump now heads to the UAE, where the focus turns to advanced technology and future growth. Abu Dhabi is positioning itself as a global hub for artificial intelligence and semiconductor manufacturing, backed by a $1.4 trillion investment plan. Qatar, meanwhile, continues to deepen defense and strategic ties with Washington. These deals are not just about economics, they are part of a broader US push to consolidate power and influence across the Gulf. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.